This is the Beitong Kunpeng 40 gaming controller. I just want to say a huge thanks to Beitong for sending this controller out. The controller was provided to me completely free of charge, but I'm not being paid to make this video, so all opinions are my own. Opening up the box, we are greeted with this card, best-selling gaming controller in China. That's what we like to see. We have a user manual. This controller is quite an interesting one. As you can see, it's quite a unique shape and design. It's actually got a bit of a retro look to it. It does have TMR joysticks, mechanical face buttons, mechanical 8-way D-pad. It is fully wireless and can be used on PC, Nintendo Switch, iOS, and Android. It's got 2 remappable buttons on the back of the controller. And unlike any other controller that I've reviewed on the channel, this one actually has TMR triggers. We do also have a little bit of RGB in the center here and on these strips on the side. And we do also have adjustable tension on the joysticks, just like the Vader 4 Pro from Flydigi. USB-C port on the top, bumpers where they normally are. These triggers do also have trigger stops, but these are trigger stops and not mouse click instant triggers. But they do reduce the travel to about 30 or 40% if I was to take a guess. Some gold pins on the back here as well, just above the connection switch. And this is for docking it on the charging station, which is sold separately. Looks like you can pick up this controller on Amazon for about $80. And the charging dock is not included in the package, so you will have to spend extra if you do want that. But in the package, you do get a wireless dongle, and at the bottom of the box, there is a USB-C cable. Very nice looking dongle with a unique design. The dongle is quite large though, definitely bigger than most other controllers. But in these situations, bigger does not always mean better.
That's what she said!
Just taking a look at the controller, it does have a little bit of a cheap look to it, but it doesn't feel cheap. Let me explain. The bumpers and triggers have this kind of retro grey kind of design to them, a bit of a dull finish, and the texture of the plastic looks a little bit cheap. We do have a very unique pattern design across the bumpers and triggers, and the finish on the faceplate and the rest of the shell of the controller does actually look pretty good. We do have this textured design on the handles here, but I've got to say this does not provide any extra grip for the controller. This is very much just a cosmetic detail, and it may as well be smooth plastic. The finish on the D-pad does have a little bit of a cheap silver finish to it, as well as these dials for adjusting the tension of the joysticks. They don't quite look and feel as premium as you would expect. The controller does feel very solid though. Giving it a good squeeze, there's no creaks or rattles when you shake the controller. All the gaps are nice and tight and everything fits nicely together. The bumpers feel pretty nice as well. They're quite tall, but the travel distance is still quite short. The triggers also feel really nice. They've got some really nice dampening. It doesn't feel like you're mashing up the insides of the controller when you're being quite aggressive with them. And even with the trigger stops, they've got some very respectable dampening. And they feel very smooth as well. The tension goes from about 30 grams of force to up to 90 grams of force. So on the minimum setting, these joysticks are very, very light. You can almost move them by just shaking the controller aggressively. But again, no rattles. And then on the maximum setting is a very, very high tension. I definitely think most gamers are going to find a comfortable spot in between the lowest and the highest. Usually when you've got very high tension thumbsticks going from left to right across the center, it can have a bit of a snappy feel, and it can affect your aim in games such as FPS shooters. But this one's got quite a smooth transition over the center, even on a high tension setting. It doesn't feel too snappy at all. The build quality is a thumbs up. The cheap look to the controller that I'm talking about is more of an opinion, and I must say it's more of a retro look. Takes me back to the early 2000s, maybe even late 1990s with that era of gaming, but it feels very much like an Xbox style controller, so it's got the aggressive angles of the handles, although it does taper quite a little bit thinner than what Xbox controllers normally do, but it's still quite comfortable. 2 buttons on the back of the controller is pretty much the minimum now that you expect from any Pro controller, and they feel pretty good as well. The actuation pressure is just about right. They do also feel quite durable as well. So if you do give them a really hard squeeze, they don't feel like they're going to fall into the back of the controller, but they're also not too light to accidentally press them either. Now this controller advertises having a 1000 Hz polling rate. This is both wired and wireless. When using the controller wirelessly with the dongle, in the exact same conditions that I test every controller wirelessly, I found that the overall input lag was a little bit more than the rest of the controllers that I do test, and I didn't feel it was ideal for FPS shooters or fast-paced gaming. The delay was just a little bit too noticeable. Not quite as much as Bluetooth of course, but still something worth mentioning. When playing with the controller plugged in with a cable though, all noticeable input lag went away, and I found the overall responsiveness of the controller very good. And with the addition of those TMR joysticks, it felt very responsive and quite precise as well. I did use this thing with 0 dead zones both in the app and in game, and I did find the joysticks to still have a very, very small center dead zone even with the settings set at 0. This also was using the controller while wired as well, but other than this very small dead zone in the center, it felt pretty good. The D-pad felt really good as well. I wasn't accidentally pressing other inputs intentionally, and it was very clicky, very responsive, and you definitely feel a lot of feedback from it. The face buttons were also a nice actuation pressure. They felt great as well. The bumpers feel great no matter where you press them as well, even though, again, they are a little bit tall. They still have a very short travel. The controller's just got an overall very solid feel and feels very durable as well. As for these TMR triggers, I don't really understand exactly what kind of benefit they're going to bring to the table. As I am primarily an FPS shooter player, this doesn't really impact me. I didn't notice any real improvement or advantage over traditional Hall effect triggers. I imagine for some applications though, this will increase precision. So if you are a gamer that plays certain applications that does need very fine, precise control of the triggers, this might be just what you're looking for. But I'm personally unable to really comment on it, as I've never really put myself in that kind of setting for FPS games. Despite saying all that, these triggers did not feel worse than others that I've tested though. Very quick on the response, very smooth, and that dampening that they've got when they reach the bottom is much better than most other controllers. When opening up and connecting the app to the controller for the first time, you will be greeted by any new firmware updates that are available. The update process is very simple, just click update and it takes care of everything for you. No super complicated processes here. I found the update process to be very quick as well. So in the app, this is where we can make all the configuration changes. We can enable 1000 Hz overclocking. We can also set up a sleep time for the controller and adjust the RGB. We can change this to whatever we want, also set the brightness. The controller does have a 6-axis gyroscope and turbo functions as well. We can customize the joystick curve, and to eliminate that center dead zone that we've been experiencing in-game, I did set the center to -3%. I've never usually had to do this on any other controller before, so it's a little bit odd to me. But once I did this, it did eliminate our dead zone and the joystick felt much better. It does also have a square mode. This is basically what we would call a raw mode. We've got full customization in here. You can drag these circles and create the graph however you want it to be, or you can just select a default preset. So delayed input, instant response, high performance balance for the triggers. We've also got a dead zone as well for those. We do have an option called faster trigger, but to help you understand what this actually means is in other software, it's also called a hair trigger mode. So it just means that the trigger is going to respond much quicker. You can remap any button on this controller to any controller input. But if we go over to Smart Control, that's where we'll find the extra buttons on the back of the controller, and we can set it up as a button, or we can set up macros for this as well. You can also set the turbo frequency in here, so how many times per second. Just a quick side note, macros and turbo functions are not something that I do go into detail with on this channel, and that's because I'm primarily a Call of Duty online multiplayer gamer, and these kinds of features and functions are frowned upon. If they are detected in game or you're suspected of using them, it is against the terms of service and action can be taken on your account. I don't necessarily promote these features, but I do let you know if a controller or product does have them available. For the motion sensor though, you can set up the gyroscope so that it acts as a joystick or as a button. You can select the left or right joystick there. There's 2 mapping modes, so either shooting or racing. Racing is where it will act more as a wheel, whereas shooting, you'll be able to use it for aiming or movement of your character. You cannot unfortunately use the gyroscope as a mouse. I know some players do like to use it this way when it's available, but we do find on most controllers actually this option is not available, and it's quite a rarity. We can adjust the sensitivity, and it's even got dead zone scaling as well. So when you are just trying to hold the controller completely still, we do tend to have a very slight movement in our hands, even when we're doing our absolute best to stay as still as possible. So you can set a little bit of a dead zone here if you do find it is a little bit too sensitive when you're trying to not make any inputs. You can also invert both axes. Vibration can also be increased and decreased, and the minimum setting is disabling it altogether. And then you can change the lighting on the controller to breathe or be static. You can also change the brightness, the color, and how it reacts when the controller is vibrating. And the other tab, this is just for the sleep settings in the app. There are also 2 configurations, so you've got Nintendo Switch and PC. So you can configure these completely separately so that when you switch from one to the other, you don't have to keep going through all the software and rechanging everything every time you change platforms. Just to summarize, this controller lands on my tier list as a C tier controller, as I am very impressed with the overall build quality, and it includes some really high quality components. Since I actually got my hands on the controller, there has been 2 firmware updates pushed to the app, so they are actively making improvements and bringing in bug fixes and new features as well. So they are very proactive with the software, which is great to see. The app is great to use as well, one of the best I've ever used. Everything is laid out super simple, easy to navigate, and there's lots of really good features in there. But the reason that it doesn't score any higher than a C tier is simply because I just don't feel like it offers the best value for money, especially with the features that it does have. Other controllers of a similar price range and even less money do have more buttons, more features, and are a little bit more tailored to a specific type of gaming. This controller is kind of an all-rounder. Yes, you can play FPS games with it and it'll do a great job. Yes, you can play a racing game with it and it'll do also great in those. Also great for solo, single-player titles, third-person games, platformer games, whatever it may be, it will do it all. But it doesn't really do one particular application super well compared to the competition. If you enjoyed the video, drop us a like, make sure you hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a future upload. That's going to be all the yapping from me today. We'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.